Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jody Harrison Bauer, and I'm so happy to have you join me once again. Everyone around the world who's been joining and listening to the show and sharing it, reviewing, thank you so much. Please remember to subscribe, review, leave me messages, email me. I'd love to hear from you. I always love to hear from you because every week my goal is to educate, empower, entertain, and inspire you to live a fearlessly authentic life. So before I get into my guest for the show today, I just wanted to remind you again to rate and review on Apple Podcasts, and also wanted to share my 20% off code on Sakara. It is a plant-based company that offers meals delivered to your home. They are nutritious and delicious, and they are plant-based. They also have other products like their metabolism powder, but you can try all these products with my code XOJODY to get 20% off on your first purchase. Go to sakara.com. That's SAKARA.com and use the code XOJODY. That is it. And on with the show. I am so excited to introduce Dr. Jennifer Berman. She has been on the show before, and we had so much to talk about. We didn't finish everything. So welcome to the show again, Dr. Berman.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you back too. And for those of you who do not know who Dr. Berman is, Dr. Jennifer Berman is a world-renowned expert, New York Times best-selling author, and one of the nation's leading authorities in the field of female sexual health. Dr. Berman founded and created the Berman Women's Wellness Center in Beverly Hills as a comprehensive, multidisciplinary, state-of-the-art center dedicated solely to women and wellness. Dr. Berman is not only a credible and relatable authority in the field of female sexual and menopausal health, but her message, commitment, voice, and vision are impacting women across all generations and creating positive change for women and girls today. Thank you. We have so much to talk about. One of the things that I wanted to start off asking about was, what are some of the common conditions that you see in your patients?
I think, my focus has been related to sexual health and sexual well-being. But over the years, I started my career, I was coming out of my residency in my 30s. So I was early to mid 30s, then 40s, now 50s. So throughout my career, I feel like the breadth of my treatments have expanded to not just sexual health, but in the context of hormone balance and perimenopause and menopausal health. So throughout the life cycle of a woman, from premenopause to perimenopause to menopause, obviously sexual health issues and challenges that come up during that time, but also how to optimize, not just sexual well-being, but well-being in general. From memory, mood, sleep, energy levels, weight things, all of the things that we're concerned about as women, in addition to sexual health.
Right. There's so much. And I mean, I'm sure there's a lot for men as well, but I love that you focus just on women because we need more women like you. Because so many women like myself, I'm postmenopausal, I'm 61 years old, and turning 60 was a big change for me. I didn't notice it right away, but probably halfway through the year, maybe I was more hypersensitive to it, but I had tried bioidentical hormones. I think we discussed it briefly when you were on the show. And everything felt really, really out of whack. And maybe it's because I knew that my hormone levels were so out of whack that it made me more aware. But I started noticing, why did it take me so much time to concentrate? Why was I being distracted so often? I don't have ADD. It's just, and with every decade, as we hit perimenopause,
Gets worse.
Yes, it is. I hate to say that. I'm so glad you said that. But let's start with when does a woman really start seeing, the average woman start seeing the signs of perimenopause?
That's a really good question. First, I want to say that I did not know that you were 60. You're a testament
I'm
to,
61.
my God, I am 57 and
You look gorgeous.
you do. Like do you remember when you were in your 20s and like 40 sounded ancient and
Yes.
then 50 was like, oh my God, that the
60s, you were almost dead.
60 you are just about dead, and I like literally feel I have anxiety. I feel like the death of 60. So I'm so glad to see you thriving and beautiful and alive and doing
But
all that.
things change, Dr. Berman. I mean, I've noticed even, and we'll get into it later. I wanted to ask you about a few things that happened to me. I also lost my mom at the end of this year. But we're going to be talking about hormones throughout the show, but really like I felt a huge change in the 60s. So I know you're going to be great. I know at 57, I started getting anxious also. And I just thought, nope, I'm invincible. I'm invincible. And then it does, you do feel a big
Sounds
difference.
so freaking old. Like you start thinking about, I have started thinking about dying,
Yes.
like where you're going to be buried. Like those
Yes.
thoughts don't never crossed my mind before. So mortality becomes sort of this bittersweet weirdness. But anyway, going back
Yes.
to not about the hormones, the perimenopause is when women first start experiencing symptoms, albeit they can be subtle in many and more prominent in others. Everybody is different and everybody experiences these changes different. But the issue is that's important for women to recognize is that we tend to downplay them or minimize them or blame them on other stuff. Like you said, my mother died, I'm stressed, or my husband lost his job, or we moved cross country, or my kid got a DUI, whatever the things are that are going on in our lives that definitely can disrupt our mood and disrupt balance, impact us, obviously. However, it's important to recognize that hormone imbalance is the cause for a lot of those symptoms, and all these stresses that go on in our life, the way that we respond to outside stresses is impacted by our hormone balance. So the symptoms women first may experience is difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. This really can happen postpartum after the first or second baby. Women will say it started after my second baby, I couldn't fall asleep. Moodiness, and when you're still menstruating, it could be worsening of PMS symptoms in terms of the mood, worsening PMS symptoms in terms of the bloating, breast tenderness, cramping, heavy periods, weight gain, difficulty maintaining the weight that you want and or gaining weight and having trouble losing it, even with diet, even with exercise, having trouble losing weight. So memory, focus, concentration, short-term memory, feeling, like you're sharp and on it, and creative and motivated. Motivation is a big one. Fatigue, feeling, lethargic, low energy throughout the day, at the end of the day. Different and changes in sexual function response. Big one, lowering of sexual desire, motivation to be sexual, difficulty achieving orgasm, harder to achieve orgasm, less intense, less, more difficult to achieve orgasm. And then also frequently vaginal dryness or, pain with intercourse. So those are, and it can be, subtle or extreme or a combination. Sometimes women will just have weight gain and low libido. Sometimes people will have, bloating, PMS, and difficulty sleeping. Sometimes women will have all of them. But these symptoms can creep in slowly and subtly and, trick you into thinking, it's this or that. And then a year, 2 years, 5 years go by, and you've put on 15 pounds. Now you haven't been sleeping. Now you're on an antidepressant and a sleeping pill and an ADD medication, when all of that, at its root is hormone related to hormone imbalance.
So how does somebody, and everything that you're saying, I either know somebody or I've gone through it or I dealt with it. I'm sure you probably did being 57, but being more aware that they are your hormones, because you think about all of the women who hit mid 40s and I've heard it all the time. I mean, I own a fitness boutique for women, and they are from 30 to 65 and 70, and you see the postpartum moms. Yes, they complain about losing the weight again and so on, but then you see so many women in their 40s who are on antidepressants. I see more women.
That's what, when you go to the gynecologist,
Yes.
that's what they give you. So if you complain about mood, and God forbid you mention a hot flash, you'll get slapped with antidepressants, which, by the way, makes sexual function complaints even worse. You can say goodbye to your libido. You can say goodbye to orgasms once you get put on Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, which is their standard, their go-to. And this is a growing frustration and challenge for me, because on the one hand, it's great because I want to help all these women. On the other hand, there's so many women that I can't even see or treat. This is why it's so wonderful that you have this podcast. So, to spread the word, because what's happening right now, this is my perception. I'm not saying this is how I feel based on my practice over decades, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing about when I'm going to the medical meetings and when I'm speaking to other doctors, that gynecologists are supposed to be the gatekeepers to women's health issues. That is who we're supposed to go to when we have concerns about our reproductive health, our sexual health, and our menopausal health. The problem is that there is a decade or more worth of gynecologists, maybe more than that lack leadership and direction, and protocols for managing hormones in women. And the reason for that,
Why?
the reason for that is that their governing body, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, is a patriarchal, old school, super rigid organization that's verging on Handmaid's Tale. And I'm probably going to get death threats for saying that, but that mentality sits and it transfers to, there's political thing in my mind.
Right.
Basis behind it is that the president elects the FDA person who then controls what drugs get approved. So there's that going on. But besides all that, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology released information about a decade ago from studies, the WHI and WHO women's health studies related to estrogen and cardiovascular risk factors and breast cancer. And they prematurely released data that was inaccurate, that suggested that estrogen is associated with breast cancer, and then had to redact that and say, well, we made a mistake. That's not really the truth. And what happened was, when they redacted it, they never came back with recommendations and guidelines and protocols. They just left it out.
They just left it like that. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't what it does.
It doesn't cause cancer, but we don't
really know.
We don't really believe in hormones, and we're going to do everything not to give you them. They did that with hormones. And then they also prematurely, the same thing happened again. I don't know if you're aware, but they did the same thing when there was this huge movement and lots of focus in the media surrounding vaginal rejuvenation and labiaplasty, and women being concerned about the appearance of their genitals, and new innovation and technologies were being developed to optimize vaginal health. And they came out with a consensus statement suggesting that these procedures were in line with genital mutilation, that doctors were mutilating women, abusing women basically with these procedures. And they released that, and that put a screeching halt to a lot of the research, to research and development of new technologies. But by the way, they redacted that too. Oh, well, we didn't really mean that. Actually, once within a minute, more data was released showing that the health benefits, the improvement in the vaginal mucosal lining, the neovascular regeneration, the collagen elastin, the relief of pain and incontinence that these minimally invasive treatments were offering, that allowed women to avoid surgical intervention and mesh and all the other things that were. So that is the problem. And so women continue to seek, help under their insurance through gynecologists. And it's not to say that they don't want to help or they don't care, because they do. And occasionally you'll find one or 2 or 3 or whatever who'll try something, or they'll give you a cream, or but they don't know what to do. You don't really need labs. They say you don't need labs because we treat patients and not numbers. So they know like pieces of information, but they're not putting it all together in a story or in a comprehensive, holistic way. So what happened to you is that you got put on some form of bioidentical hormones. And what happens is, if you're not balanced, which you obviously weren't, you're going to have symptoms, breast tenderness, fullness, weight. You'll feel more crazy. You'll feel this or that. You'll feel bloated. You'll feel swollen. All of those things, not uncommon. And what the doctor didn't know, say, don't worry. Let's do this. Let's do that, let's try to this. But she didn't know what to do, so you just floundered around. And I don't know where you are now, but that is once they flounder around, they'll try that.
I went off everything in June, tried it after 3 months, then tried again in August, then had you on the show in September. And I haven't used anything since. And when I think back at this past year, I felt like a cuckoo brain. Even though on the outside, nobody could tell, but inside, I didn't know if I was coming or going. My weight was fluctuating. I'm all of 5 foot, maybe 1 feet tall. And, I usually weigh between 108 and 112, somewhere, that 4-pound fluctuation. And I was like going up to 115. And then I was being miserable because, in this little body, I can't hold a lot of weight, and I'm in the fitness industry. So I feel for all the women. I have had these conversations with other gynecologists as well, and they don't know what to do hormonally. And it's crazy. You're absolutely right. They seem like the dinosaurs out there.
The whole field, the people that go into, this is my perception, this isn't everybody, my perception, right. People that choose that field are very algorithm based, and they follow, detailed, tree diagrams for how to manage different conditions, different problems, and memorize those. And when somebody falls outside of the algorithm or the tree, you're in Neverland. They don't know what to do. And they're not necessarily the forward thinkers, the innovators, the creators, not all of them, but that's generally the nature of the practice. And the practices are structured such that nurses can do everything. So nurse practitioners are mostly the ones that run GYN practices.
Totally.
And the gynecologists are in the OR delivering babies or doing, uterine stuff, and managing hormones and listening to women all day long isn't what the doctors do. They're not even in there. The nurses practitioners are in there. So the whole field, if this is going to, what it's going to require is a movement, and the movement is going to be generated by the people, the women, and the women are going to, get to a point where they're going to demand, this needs to change. And there's going to be, and it's already happening, these femtech companies that are going to be establishing telehealth platforms that reach the masses, that are going to be offering, and I'm consulting with like 5 of them.
That's great.
Bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for women, sort of along the lines of hims and hers,
Oh my God, that would be great.
So that's the future. And when that happens, then the FDA and ACOG, they're going to have a fit, and they're going to be saying, charlatans, and there's no evidence, and it's going to force change. It's going to force. So once these tech companies, which are funded by venture capital and Wall Street, lots of money plumbing into that, then they're going to have to make change. The FDA is going to have to open up the gates for more drugs to be approved. Right now, there's few.
Well, the FDA is a political thing. I mean, it's a political thing anyway. So what does a woman, I can't wait to see what you do, because I know that you are a force to be reckoned with. So if you are involved in any of this, it is going to be so helpful to so many women. So a perimenopausal woman who thinks that she might be depressed, thinks she has ADD, or can't fall asleep. I started having some of those symptoms myself in my late 30s. And I remember they wanted to put me on Prozac. Yes. My husband was working a lot. I had 2 small kids, and you're like, I can't sleep and everything's miserable. And I remember them trying to put me on Prozac, and I said no. So what does a perimenopausal woman do Where does she go to? What does she do? How does she know? Like, what does she do?
So here's the thing, is that what I would recommend is that you go to your primary care doctor or your GYN with these issues and complaints. I would inform myself as much as I could, read as much as I could, print out information, the transcript from your show, whatever else, everything you can read, because especially for the gynecologist, in my experience from talking to my patients, they will look at stuff, they will read it, they will, address and try to absorb that. And then what I do is that if this woman were to call my office, is, we'd set up a consultation, I'd ask her to get her labs drawn. But here's the thing with the gynecologist, is that they don't know how to read the labs in that time frame in the perimenopause may look, for all intents and purposes, based on the ranges they give you, might look quote unquote normal, and they'll tell you your labs are fine, nothing's wrong with you. But that's not necessarily the case, because there are subtle differences in the ratios between estrogen and progesterone levels, your testosterone levels, what I consider normal levels, and what LabCorp and Quest.
So what could you give us what a normal is there? Could you do that? Tell us what a normal level is?
Because if a woman is cycling, it varies.
Okay.
So we look at the ratio between her estrogen level and her progesterone level. I look at the FSH level, the follicle stimulating hormone, which is a sign that tells us, how your body is responding to the estrogen. So if FSH levels are higher, then even though you're making hormone, or even though we're giving you patches and creams, your body is still starving for it and still thinking it's not there. So we have to go up higher. And so then sometimes when estrogen levels get too high in relation to the progesterone, that's probably what happened to you. It makes you crazy and feel crazy and
gain weight.
Feel fat and bloated and puffy, and by the way, it goes away. So if you had somebody that was going to say, okay, stick this out, we're going to, the fatness is it's water retention. So with diuretics and some of it goes away, but that's important information to have. So you use with this protocol, you got fat, and so now we need to do this, and they didn't know what to do at that point, and they just sort of leave you flailing around. But getting puffy and bloated and fat after for all these years that you haven't been on it, and you're obviously sensitive to subtle changes in your hormones, there are many people like that, then if you were informed and you were prepared mentally, like, okay, this may be, it would have been a different experience. But going from one thing to another and then having the doctor look like a deer in the headlights is scary. So but in any event, I would ask for you to get your hormone levels.
Okay.
Hopefully the doctor, and then make recommendations based on your symptoms, your age, your hormone levels, your risk factors, the medications that you're on. We can make a general assessment based on all of those things, what hormones you would benefit from. And you don't need many times you don't need full replacement levels when you're in your late 30s and early 40s.
I was going to say perimenopausal, you don't need full replacements at that point. Probably not.
Some do, some women have what we call premature ovarian failure, and but most don't require full doses, and many don't even require estrogen. So what we take for granted, and it's unfortunate, and this is another big gap within the field of gynecology, is their perception and position on testosterone and the testosterone replacement in women, which they do not support, and they don't know anything about, and they are not advocates of. But
I'm going to stop you right there, because I want to talk about testosterone for women big time, because that's something that a lot of women don't think they need, and they think their voice is going to get deep and they're going to grow a penis or something. Right. Yeah. So I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back with Dr. Jennifer Berman. Hello, everybody. We are back on Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jody Harrison Bauer. So happy to have you come back. And we are here today with Dr. Jennifer Berman, talking about female sexual health. And we were talking about testosterone before the break. So let's get into why so many women misunderstand the use of testosterone in their bodies?
Well, I think the misconception is that testosterone is a male hormone, and that if you take it, then you're gonna have hair growth, acne skin, hair growth, acne, oily skin, coarsening of the voice, increase in the clitoral size, the size of your clitoris. Those are all potential side effects of high levels of testosterone. Those are true. However, under conditions where you're with a healthcare provider who knows how to prescribe testosterone, who is monitoring your levels and examining you, not just throwing hormones at you, then those risk factors are mitigated or don't happen. And by the way, all of them are reversible except coarsening of the voice and increase in clitoral size. And if that happens to anyone, then that means that they have been unmonitored, that they've been just given creams and pills and have not been under medical care. So those shouldn't happen. Now, today, what's really exciting that has sort of changed in my practice is the introduction. I have just started within the last 2 years doing pellet therapy, in particular the BioT pellets. And the reason I adopted that protocol is because they have now implanted over 2 million people. So there's data from women, over 2 million,
Wow.
From all ages, races, socioeconomic status, sizes, risk factors, or whatever. So from the data, we're able to extrapolate and establish clearly defined dosing protocols, which didn't exist before. So before, the problem with the pellets, which is why you're scared of them, is that you didn't well, maybe you're little, we'll put one in you and she might do two. There was no standardization, no protocol, no guidelines for dosing in women, because testosterone, as of right now, thank you FDA, is not FDA approved for use in women. So we have to prescribe it off label.
Right. So what I heard was women like maybe 8 years ago who got pellets, who had hormone replacements, would have this crazy, crazy, crazy sex drive, like out of control, like they're 18 years old. And then by month 2, it sort of evened off, or maybe a few weeks later. And then towards the end of the life of the pellet, if I'm explaining this correctly, they felt dead. Like,
well, I mean, as the pellet, so that's normal. So you're taking, you say the same thing about cocaine. You feel great, and then it goes down. So big deal. So then you have to get pelleted again, or you put your patch on again if you're doing a patch. So yes, increases your libido. And the dudes have the same problem. They inject their testosterone, they peak, they're great, and then it starts to go out, then they have to inject again, but the beauty of the pellets is you're not up and down, so you have a physiologic level that's maintained, and if you keep dosing, then you never fall. So the goal would be to, in those ladies, before they plummet back down, that you keep on a schedule, but then when you put more in. So, and that varies patient to patient, because the pellets release hormone based on your individual, each woman's cardiac output and blood flow. So if somebody's super active, triathlon, they're going to burn through them faster. Somebody's more sedentary, they're going to go through slower. So your metabolism, your gene, everything, your activity levels, what you eat, impacts how you metabolize anything. So, but if you can get an idea, I'm starting to feel 3 months, 3.5 months, whenever that is. And then, you stay on a schedule, the same as you would applying a patch or putting on the cream, doing those things. And if you stay, within that window, then yes, there might be subtle ups and downs, but you can, stay consistent.
And this is by working with a physician, right? And this is by working with a physician who knows how to monitor you, so you don't have those ups and those downs. You don't have those surges after maybe a month or 2, because there's a physician monitoring your hormone levels.
So here's what I have found, and you bring up a really good point. So I'm using the BioT pellets, because those are the ones where this dosing protocol exists. They're the purest pellets without I know how they're metabolized. I know all the data. There's a whole system and science behind it. But I have found, this is my personal experience, that in terms of testosterone, we are dosing testosterone women, and I tend to dose more conservative. And what the computer tells me I should give, I even frequently give less. Sometimes not, but I'd rather err on less and having to boost, give more than giving too much. And
I agree.
So, but to your point, I am frequently having to boost at about 8 weeks with more, but big deal. So at 8 weeks, it really, so it's not, we haven't yet, thank you FDA, because we're not able to expand the science yet, but we haven't yet figured out how to make them last longer, how to make, but that's okay. So you have to do it again a little sooner. I'm okay with that for right now, because the testosterone via pellet, the way that gets metabolized, the way that makes you feel. And by the way, I'm pelleted right now, and I've done every other thing, every cream, every troche, every lozenge, every drop, every suppository in your vagina, but you name it, I've prescribed it, I've tried it. And in my opinion, professionally, clinically, and personally, the best way to deliver testosterone in women right now, today, 2022, is through the pellets. And the reason for that is exactly what I said, because it gets metabolized in a seamless physiologic way that optimizes the beneficial effects and minimizes the side effects. We do need to get women's levels higher. And I've known this for my whole career, back like in 1990, when we first started doing testosterone levels, in order for women to experience subjectively changes, we need to get them into the 100 to 250 level range, which to gynecologists will be horrified. Oh my God, you're going to be a man with that. And so, but again, knowing the science, being comfortable with what the levels that you need to be, and being able to achieve those levels without side effects. We can do that with pellets. With the creams and the troches and the lozenges and all the other ways that we're doing it compounded, when you get women up, when you boost up to those levels, they will get side effects, hair growth, all the things that I said. And you have to play game. You have to dig down a little bit, add a gel.
Well, it's a science. It's science, and working with the body's metabolism and, as you said, activity level. It's almost with anything, but in this, I mean, it comes down to a science. So why are so many women confused? That's my first question. Confused about why they need testosterone, and why don't women understand what testosterone does in their body? Can you explain to everybody what it does in a woman's body?
So first and foremost, it is an essential hormone for women as it is for men, and our ovaries throughout, make it. We make androgens and testosterone. So what, in terms of physiologically and subjectively, testosterone enhances is lean muscle mass versus fat mass, energy levels, physical energy, as well as emotional energy. Like, let's go to the gym, let's go to your creativity and enthusiasm are rooted in testosterone, as well as your physical energy. Cognitive function, estrogen plays a role in memory as well, a big part, but testosterone too, for creativity, for cognitive function, for the mental gymnastics and mental agility that you had when you're 20 that you want to have in your 30s, 40s, 50s. I feel one of the biggest things that I feel when my hormones start to taper off is stupid. I really feel sometimes scarily stupid, like where I'll miss a joke or even forget where I parked my car, literally, and then panic sets in because then I'm convinced I have Alzheimer's. So the mental clarity, mental focus, performance, your ability to sustain throughout a day, working into later hours without decompensating, testosterone related. Sexual function, libido, sexual energy, physical energy, emotional energy, testosterone. Orgasm, genital sensation, testosterone. Testosterone is also, now we have a growing body of evidence to show that testosterone is protective in the breast. So it actually prevents breast cancer. So that's another great, new discovery and piece of information. So
we all need it. We need it so badly. We need it so badly. And it's like one of the first hormones that seems to like fade away as we are in premenopause, right?
After the second baby. Like that's
right.
After my second baby, I started the low libido. decline of interest in sex. That's how it first shows up. Fatigue and low sex drive are, related to testosterone.
So for me, in my 40s, I got divorced at 42, and I was like, I couldn't get enough sex. Now, maybe it's because I was married for 17 years, right? And I felt depressed and sad and everything else. And that's why I was having a lot of sex. But I was making up for all the sex I didn't have in my 20s. So I always heard that women reach their sexual peak in their 40s.
Mid to late 30s, and the reason for that is not anything to do with hormones, but it has to do with experience, with life,
confidence,
with wisdom, with your comfort level now.
Right.
Who
Okay.
cares what he thinks about my breath? That you're much more empowered and free sexually, experience wise, and lack of and letting go of all the the hangups and worries and things that we had when we were younger. There's a new freedom and a new confidence and a new level of entitlement sexually that comes with increasing age. So then once women discover that, especially if they're single or getting divorced, if you went from one to another, then it's a brave new world out there. And
Right.
Then that alone, when you're inspired, which you were sexually inspired,
right,
that it flows, and with or without hormones, but it's not necessarily sustainable over time. Eventually there's only so many dudes you can sleep with. And so
right. And then your body starts telling you, right. Like at 49, 50, I stopped getting my period at 50. So, but at 49, so at 45, mid 40s, women start feeling that perimenopause. So when does menopause normally hit women, the average age?
So average age is early to mid 50s, and menopause, when you're menopausal, it's not necessarily defined by age, but defined by absence of menses for 1 year. So if you have not had a period for 12 months, you are technically, by medical definition, menopausal. Now, sometimes women will 8 months, 9 months, 6 months, every 3 months. Right. Then you're still menstruating, you're considered perimenopausal, and there's different, the treatment of perimenopause versus menopause is different. When you're right on menopause and you're not, and you haven't had a cycle, though the requirements for hormones are higher. So, and that's when women will start experiencing other symptoms. And those other symptoms that are kind of the hallmark of menopause are hot flashes and night sweats. And hot flashes don't sound like any big deal, but they can be, for many women, extremely debilitating because they can come out of nowhere. They are associated frequently with feelings of anxiety. There's shame and discomfort because you're sweating out of control and can't, in a freezing cold room.
Right. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Could younger women still have hot flashes?
Yeah, they will. Even if they're perimenopause, now and then they'll have them. They will frequently have night sweats more than hot flashes, where they wake up sweaty, wake up drenched in sweat during the perimenopause. Some of them will have some hot flashes occasionally. Ones that are having hot flashes and night sweats, severely, are closer to menopause. So, because the hot flashes and night sweats are really, when ovarian function is, sustainably low for more than short periods of time. And then what happens is, so now you're early to mid 50s, now you're 57, 60, now you're in your 60s. So then what happens, now you're not having, let's say, assuming you don't take any hormones, you just white knuckle through it. Now the hot flashes and night sweats are gone. You're not really having those, maybe here and there, but for the most part, not. And this is when gynecologists say, okay, you're great, you're done.
They go bye-bye. Go off into the pasture. Go off into the pasture.
You're done. We're going to take you off now because you're postmenopausal. But what happens is, during postmenopausal, you may not be having hot flashes and night sweats, but you've got everything else, and it's worse. So the sleep, the mood, the energy, the weight, your skin, hair, nails, your vagina, your libido, your bone mineral density, your muscle strength, pain, joints, cardiovascular health, cognitive function, all of that is going down the drain. And then they rip you off hormones. So that is another area of focus of mine is the perimenopause, where the women are scrambling around, and postmenopause, where women are, scrambling around in a different way, and there's, that those.
I think so many women, and I'm not just saying this because I'm 61, but I think so many women being in the baby boomer generation, we're living longer. We know how to take care of ourselves. I'm generally speaking. We are educated women. We want the information because we want to live as long as we can. We've seen our parents suffer. We've seen them not take care of themselves because for the most part, our parents' generation, my parents' generation, and as I said before, I lost my mom at the end of December, and they never worked out. It's not like this generation, the generation I'm in, you're in, you're really not in the baby boom, but just brushing around it. So we want that information. So we're hungry for it. So please, please help us.
So, it's really important that we're having these conversations, and women recognizing that the changes that are occurring in their body are natural and normal, albeit, but we don't need to suffer. You don't. The message I think that's out there is that this is what happens. You're just getting older. Like, this is what happens as you age, and we'll give you. And what they do, it's not just gynecologists, it's medicine in general in this part of the world, is that we'll start you'll get the ADD med, your cholesterol, you're getting fat, you got high cholesterol, now you're on a cholesterol medicine, you can't put you on an ADD medicine and an antidepressant and then on Lipitor for your, we start putting all the, as the diseases expand, we're treating the symptoms and not the root cause. And at the root of all of the dysfunction, this is my personal opinion, not everything, but most all things, starts and stops with hormone balance.
I agree. I'm not a doctor, and I completely agree. Everything starts with the hormones. It's the hormones.
Prevention of disease, optimization of well-being, and longevity is hormone balance. Prevention of disease, optimization of sexual health, and health in general well-being. And it's not what's starting when you're 57 or 60. This starts, and this is what needs to change, is women during the perimenopause. And it may take forever, because what the FDA is scared about is reproductive age women taking hormones and cancer and all this. I want to say really briefly, by the way, just if there's no other message that gets out there, that estrogen does not cause breast cancer. Estrogen does not cause breast cancer. Okay, that's one of the things that the ACOG had to retract when they came out with this, say estrogen's dangerous, estrogen causes breast cancer. Estrogen does not cause breast cancer. Estrogen causes breast glandular tissue to grow. Estrogen, synthetic estrogen, given orally with synthetic progesterone, the compound Prempro, which hopefully nobody's prescribing anymore. Right. We're not even giving oral.
My mom took Premarin.
Premarin vaginally or for?
I don't know. I mean, I was like a kid. Right.
Being a horse enthusiast, and I just don't, Premarin in and out just because of that.
Right.
I'm against, but there's other vaginal estradiol products that don't come from horse urine. But Prempro, the compounded synthetic estrogen plus synthetic progesterone together in some women after a period of time was associated with a slight increase of breast cancer. But we're not using those hormones anymore. We're using bioidentical hormones. Now the gynecologists will say there's no evidence, but there is evidence supporting the beneficial effects of estradiol in women, the beneficial effects and protective effects of bioidentical progesterone, and now we have an overwhelming body of evidence about the health benefits of testosterone in women.
Can you explain the difference between, because we've thrown around bioidentical, and there might be a lot of people listening that don't understand the difference between synthetic and bioidentical hormones. Can you explain the difference?
Yes, and I want to be careful to say that, not everything needs to be bioidentical, and bioidentical doesn't necessarily mean better, but what it does mean is that it is the same as your body makes. So the same molecule that your ovaries, adrenal glands, thyroid, produces, that it is synthesized from plants or a natural product. It's not a chemical that's compounded in a lab that acts on a receptor to do the same thing as your estradiol molecule will do. It's actually the same as an estrogen molecule, so, or a hormone receptor activator. So that's all that means. Does it mean that it's necessarily better? In my opinion, probably yes. That's not to say, though, that synthetic compounds, be it hormones or other drugs, aren't extremely effective and beneficial, because they are. But in this case that we're talking about, in women, when there's really limited FDA approved and cleared options, that this is what we have available to us, and there is enough evidence, in my opinion, about safety and efficacy. By the way, I just want to say that in terms of breast cancer, my mother died of breast cancer in her 70s. My sister, who's 4 years younger than me, she's in remission now, but has breast cancer. And we do not have the BRCA gene, but that's the only thing that I check for. So there's probably a million other genes. I may have it, I don't know, and I don't care. I'm not even looking at that. But the BRCA gene, I agreed to be tested for that. And we don't have that. And I am on, and have been on since I was 38, I'm not 57, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Now I have, my breast surgeon is Christy Funk, who was very conservative. She's the one that took off Angelina's breasts and got on that crusade. So she's not, she's very rigid, but she has, and she explained to me what my risk factors were compared to the general population. I have higher risk because of my family history. I'm on hormones, which then increases a little more. And I looked at the data and I looked at the numbers, and I thought to myself, there is a slightly higher risk, but quality of life is equally as important as quantity of life. And I was one of the women that was extremely sensitive, like my mental sanity and ability to function was impaired. I could not function properly or even interact in relationships being out of balance. My brain needs hormones, and I was going to either, become homicidal, killing people, or so quality of life was equally as important as quantity of life. And I made the conscious decision to continue with hormones. And I had a rigid screening process in the beginning with MRIs and scans and this and that, for about 5 years. And we're 10, 20 now, things they've given up, all right, you're not getting this. But, and I also made, and I think that this is a really important message, that the way that we think, the things that we think about, the things that we focus on become. So if you're worried,
totally true, right?
Breast cancer, the cancer, that's when you get cancer.
I agree. You have to stay positive. I mean, so much of being sick is staying positive. If you, God forbid, get sick.
And we have the ability, our bodies were designed to heal and regenerate. And when, things go awry, it's really important to recognize. I'm not saying that, we're responsible for our own diseases, although I am saying that a little bit. And I have seen and witnessed myself personally. I made the conscious decision, I'm not getting this. You got to take that. So put that over there. And I just tunnel visioned on well-being and didn't think. Now I worry about other things, and most of the things I worry about happen. So I've learned myself through this is one of the tools that I use when you say, how do you do it? In addition to the hormones and exercise and all that, is it's a daily reprieve from insanity that goes on in my head. The voices that are talking, that are telling me, you're not this, you're not that, you're not good, blah, blah, blah. I've learned over the years to quiet that down, to shut that off, and to reframe, pivot, and, not listen to that voice. Everything that voice is saying is wrong.
I started when my mom was in hospice. I started journaling again because I was falling, and I don't fall, but I was falling all the time because I was in a hurry to get to hospice or whatever it was. So when I walk my dog, she weighs 65 pounds, I think I'm going to fall. So before the show, I was walking her and I said, okay, Jody, you're not going to fall. But I totally agree with you. Mindset is huge, but also doing all the other things that you're talking about. This has been an amazing, amazing show. Thank you so much. I still have so many more questions for you. Maybe we'll schedule another show. But before we have 1 minute left, what does living a fearlessly authentic life mean to you?
I think, being authentic is being vulnerable and being willing to, expose your weaknesses and limitations as well as your strengths. And I have tried to practice that in my relationships, in my career, and in particular with my patients. And I think that aspect of authenticity is what has defined my career. It's not. It's maybe something that other people have to focus on and try. I was blessed with the inability. I fundamentally am incapable. I feel ill when I am not able to be true to myself, and when I have to act a way that I don't think or feel. Everybody knows it. But for those that are more skilled and more sophisticated and polished and who developed the skill sets to be able to be poised and graceful when they feel upset, to be able to maintain dignity and sanity in crisis. I'm not one of those people. But for those that can, to bear in mind that it is really important to process feelings, that we can stuff them to a point, but if you don't address them, it will come out in other ways, either in behavior or in your health. One of two ways:
Right.
how you act or how healthy you are. And when you're not,
I completely agree. It has been such a pleasure and an honor to have you on my show again. How do people reach you?
So the best way to reach me, so my Instagram is at Jen Berman MD. You can also find me on www.bermansexualhealth.com is my website. And there's the phone number, and then you can direct message me on Instagram.
And I'll have lots of information on this podcast too. So thank you, Dr. Berman, so much. I really appreciate having you on the show. And until next week, everybody, have a fearlessly authentic week.